Welcome to the Federation Together pre-show. We will be joined by singers from our partnership communities and leaders from our Federation communities.
When I think of Federation Together, I immediately see the national and international network of leaders who support individuals around the world at a moment's notice. Together, we live our Jewish values, including feeding the hungry, caring for people at all stages of life, and stimulating our minds, bodies, and souls. Thank you for being part of this Federation Together experience.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Federation Together is a watchword for who we are as a North American Jewish community. We've come through a very difficult time, and we have difficulty as we go forward. How do we identify those needs and concerns and address them in each of our communities so that we can provide resiliency and strength? Our core aspiration is to see that we provide those resources and elements that will make us a stronger Jewish community, not only yesterday, for the work we have to do tomorrow. Thank you for being part of this Federation experience.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true North, strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
When I think about Federation Together, I really think about the power of our collective system and that we can all thrive in our individual communities because of the strength of the Federation system behind us. All of us are stronger because of the work that we do collectively. Thank you so much for participating in Federation Together. You make our Jewish communities stronger.
כל עוד בלבב פנימה, נפש יהודי הומייה, ולפתן מזרח קדימה, עין לציון סופיה.
When I think of Federation Together, I think about the Jewish ecosystem coming together to help innovate, strategize, and plan for the safety, growth, and engagement of Jewish communities in the United States and abroad. Thank you for being a part of this Federation Together experience.
Welcome to the Federation Together Plenary. We are so happy you are here. The program will now begin.
I rise up in every way that feels right in my own soul. I rise up in every way that feels right in my own soul. I rise up in every way that feels right in my own soul. I rise up in every way that feels right in my own soul. I rise up in every way that feels right in my own soul. I rise up in every way that feels right in my own soul. I rise up, oh, I rise up, I rise up in my own soul. I rise up in every way that feels right in my own soul. I rise up in every way that feels right in my own soul. Oh, I rise up. Sometimes I lay under the moon and thank God I'm breathing. And I pray don't take me soon, 'cause I'm here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I'm never gonna bring me down. 'Cause when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around. 'Cause all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we're not gonna fight no more. Will be no more wars and the children will play. One day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. It's not about win or lose, 'cause we all lose when we feed on the souls of the innocent. Blood-drenched pavement, keep on moving 'cause the waters stay raging. In this maze is our crazy, crazy. Don't lose your way, don't let it faze you. Sometimes in my tears I drown, around, but I'll never let her get me down. 'Cause when that negativity surrounds, I know one day I'll turn around. 'Cause all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we're not gonna fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and the children will play one day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day.
Please welcome the chair of the Jewish Federations of North America, Mark Wilf.
Wow, what an uplifting way to kick off the Federation Together Plenary. Welcome, everyone. I am proud and honored to be here with you this evening for the first ever virtual GA. It's not what we originally visioned, but it has given us the opportunity to come together in a way that we have never done before. Tonight, you are part of a gathering of thousands of Federation stakeholders, partners, and friends representing 146 federations and 300 network communities, and as well our continental and global partners. As we gather tonight to reflect on the last 8 months and look to the future, I want to take this moment to express my deep gratitude to the leadership, resilience, courage, and generosity that our federation system has exhibited during this especially trying time. Tonight, we will recognize and celebrate the power of our collective efforts. I'm inspired by the response, hard work, and innovation that has occurred in every corner of our continent. And I'm in awe when I think about the collective impact that our system has made possible all over the world. Each and every one of you make this possible every day, in good times, and as we've seen through this year, in more challenging times. Thank you, Toda Rabah, for all you do. No one wishes more than I that we could turn the page today, put the pandemic in the rearview mirror, and focus only on rebuilding our communities to be even stronger than they were before. But we all know that's not yet possible. With too many new cases still reported daily in too many parts of the Federation system, with our Israeli families suffering from a resurgence of the virus, and with a vaccine not yet in hand, we all know that we have a ways to go before we turn that page. And so, I say to you this evening, we will not flag in our efforts to meet the emergency needs of our communities, no matter how long it takes. And whether it's addressing the health and financial challenges of our neighbors and friends, sustaining our communal institutions, or keeping us all connected until we can gather again in person, our federation system will continue to lead the way. Hine matovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. How good it is to be here with our federation family. How proud I am to be the chair of the Jewish Federations of North America today and to represent you at this powerful virtual GA. In unity, b'yachad, and with great love for each of you, Ahava. I'm now excited to ask that we call the roll of our 146 federations. Together, we have and we will continue to care for, protect, and inspire our Jewish communities here and around the world. Thank you. Am Yisrael Chai.
איך שהלב נפתח, חופק את העולם, ובקריאה גדולה, נשיר לאהבה. אמרו הכל אפשר, זה לא מאוחר, השחר כבר עלה, זמן
לאהבה. יחד לב אל לב נפתח ונראה את האור שבשמיים. יחד לב אל לב נפתח בתקווה לאהבה, ורק אם נאמין ובלי שום דאווין בדרך העולה. זה שיר לאהבה. לה 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 בשמיים. יחד לב אל לב נפתח בתקווה לאהבה, ורק אם נאמין ובלי שום דאווין בדרך העולה. זה שיר לאהבה.
Federation Together.
האור שבשמיים. יחד לב אל לב נפתח בתקווה לאהבה, ורק אם נאמין ובלי שום דאווין בדרך העולה. שיר לאהבה.
And now, please welcome Delaware's very own and the chair of the Federation Together Plenary, Suzanne Grant.
That was fantastic. Welcome everyone to the 2020 JFNA General Assembly. It's so incredible to have you all here in one virtual location. When we set out to create this Federation Together experience, we wanted to make sure that this plenary truly represented our Federation system. We're so grateful to have worked together with a committee that represented all of your communities, as well as our overseas partners, to develop tonight's program. If you're here with us tonight, then you probably already know that each of your federations serve as the engine for Jewish communal life. With the arrival of COVID-19, we all had to kick it into overdrive, working jointly in our individual communities and coming together as one unified federation system, bonded across organizational boundaries in order to collaborate in new ways and meet the unprecedented challenges of this pandemic, reaffirming our leadership role in North America's Jewish community. In addition to everything that we focused on here at home, our commitment to Israel remained constant. No, actually, I would say it was even strengthened by the common issues we've been facing on both sides of the ocean. Okay, how much do you miss going to Israel? Normally, I'm there at least twice a year, on Federation missions or visits with family and friends. I know that my experience and longing is not unique. I think for all of us, our commitment to Israel becomes even more important when we're not able to physically be there, to experience firsthand our life-changing work on the ground, to connect with the people it impacts and gain a deeper understanding of all that we're accomplishing and what more is needed, because our work is never really done. But here's another benefit to having a virtual GA. Tonight, we will come together with Israel right here. I'm honored to bring to the screen Israel's three most influential political leaders: Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli alternate Prime Minister Benjamin Gantz, and the leader of the opposition party, Yair Lapid.
Greetings from Jerusalem to all of you participating in this first online General Assembly of the Jewish Federations of North America. And special thanks to my friend Mark Wilf, JFNA's Chairman of the Board of Trustees, and former Member of Congress Eric Fingerhut, CEO and President. I know that for the thousands of you who are participating in this conference from across the United States and Canada, this has not been an easy year. The COVID-19 epidemic has exacted a terrible toll on so many Jewish communities. And the need to socially distance has forced the cancellation of so many Jewish communal activity and events and conferences. But it's my sincere prayer that by this time next year, the pandemic will be, if not long gone, diminishing and less affecting our lives. Life will have returned to a more normal routine. I hope you'll be at Chicago for the GA 2021, and I look forward to joining you there. Of course, in 2023, I'll be seeing you here in Jerusalem for a very special GA to celebrate Israel's 75th anniversary. That GA, like all GAs, will showcase the unbreakable bond between North American Jewry and the State of Israel. This is a bond I fervently cherish. It's a bond I know you all fervently cherish. I wish each and every one of you a productive GA, and I hope to see you in Chicago.
Shalom, dear friends. Yes, the context is different this year, but this is still an opportunity for us to remember some important truth, like how the story of our people and our ties to each other are about more than just this challenging moment. As always, challenge and opportunity come together. As an Israeli general, I know this very well. For 7 decades, we have been forced to remain strong. But 7 decades have also taught us that the best possible use of our strength is securing peace. Our challenges then have forced us to be creative, helping us change reality for the better. And really, we can only do that together because without the power of our solidarity, military strength alone is never enough. My friends, let us allow our sense of belonging to each other and to the much bigger story of our people carry us through the uncertainty of these times and help us keep our faith that we can make things better, even if it gets difficult, especially when it gets difficult. I look forward to meeting you, Be'ezrat Hashem, in person in Chicago next year, of course here in Israel for Israel's 75th Independence Day. Thank you, my friends. Toda rabba.
Friends, I know you and you know me, even if we've never met. I know what your Passover tables looked like. I know how beautiful your children looked at their bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. I know what your most treasured values are, and you know mine. Because we are all part of one thing. If our parents' history had been different, even by an inch, if your parents or grandparents had come here and my parents had gone to the United States, then I could be you and you could be me. We don't have to agree on everything, we don't have to take the same decisions, but we have a responsibility to preserve that love, to preserve that bond. The Jewish nation is a contract between the generations that have passed, the generations that are living, and the generations that are yet to be born. I will do everything to uphold that I know you will too. This has been a challenging year for the Jewish people and for the world. But physical distance can't break the bonds of a family. We look forward to welcoming you all to Israel again as soon as possible. In the meantime, look after yourselves, look after one another, and look after your communities. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you to our valued Israeli leadership. Next, please welcome the chairs of the National Young Leadership, Marissa Poland and Ari Ackerman.
What a way to begin the 2020 virtual GA, our very own virtual visit to all of our Federation communities, and even greetings from the top leaders in Israel.
Really incredible. So now we felt it was important to turn our attention to looking back at these last 8 months and how our Federation leaders and partners have navigated through the pandemic and other challenges.
I'll never forget the disappointment we all felt the day we had to cancel our National Young Leadership Cabinet mission to Latvia and France.
Yes, we'll never forget it, and amazing how long ago that seems. So much incredible work went into the planning by some of our best cabinet leaders, with over 100 of us who were scheduled to go. It was truly heartbreaking to have to cancel. And I know that same heartbreak was also felt throughout our Federation system and Jewish community in large and small ways, especially during the early days of the pandemic.
Since then, it has been incredibly powerful and moving to watch our federations and partners come together to do extraordinary things in order to support our communities here and around the world.
It has been remarkable and beautiful. It makes me so proud to be part of the Federation Collective. So let's take a look back, a comprehensive look back, to see what we have all lived through over these past 8 months.
In March, our world turned upside down. Seniors everywhere began falling ill, schools shuttered, hospitals overflowed, families worldwide were told to stay home. And together, we all mourned. And while the world was in such darkness, Federation found a way to notice me. A 25-year-old getting ready to enter my master's degree program. As my summer, and honestly, my life plans shifted, Federation stepped in and created an experience focused on young adults, the Jewish Changemakers.
This summer, I participated in the Changemakers Fellowship. I was supposed to be teaching acting to kids, but due to the pandemic, it was canceled.
And so, of course, being a journalism major, I had to learn everything I could. Just like Federation had set out to notice me, I set out to learn more about Federation. What you're going to see is my investigation of Federation's extraordinary leadership since the start of the pandemic. Meet Mark Baker. I can hear you, Mark, but I can't
now can you see me?
Okay, there, you're great. Okay, good. I'm here just trying to learn more about what Federation does. So if you had just one sentence to describe Federation, what would you say?
Federation is a dynamic platform for mobilizing people and philanthropy to make a bigger difference than any of us could on our own.
And in this pandemic, what do you think has been so incredible about the work of Federation?
What we've accomplished together is extraordinary. Federations from across this continent came together and raised and distributed more than $175 million of emergency funds. And that's on top of the $1 billion raised and allocated annually, all to help our Jewish communities in the face of this incredibly challenging pandemic.
How was Federation able to raise so much money when so many people were losing their jobs? With everyone feeling so anxious and so isolated, how were they able to provide such incredible leadership during this time? To help me learn, I got in touch with some of the top leaders in our federations.
I think what the strength of Federation in that moment is that in panicking times, we did not act panicked.
When the pandemic began, we set priorities for 2020. All of our agencies stopped fundraising for themselves and joined with us in what was truly a united Jewish appeal to address our community's most urgent needs.
We got in front of donors, we were able to articulate the need in a really powerful way, and then really quickly survey the community to figure out what those needs really were, and then target those grants in really strategic ways.
But what did federations really do?
One area that I think is worth focusing on is PPE. PPE is necessary for every single agency, every single organization, and that ability to work with federations across the country to make purchasing those possible has been unbelievable.
And of course, as I learned more about federations, I also learned a little about the national organization JFNA and the critical role it played in helping nonprofits nationwide access the necessary government funding to hold off deep economic decline.
Hello, I'm calling from the Torah Academy of San Antonio. Our school really needs the help right now. We have parents not paying tuition, etc., and our biggest fundraiser has been canceled.
This effort enabled the Jewish community to access more than $500 million in public funds so they could sustain day schools and synagogues, healthcare agencies, Jewish community centers, and programs that sustain vibrant Jewish life. I met up with Miriam Rosenzweig, president and CEO of the Milwaukee Jewish Federation.
When it came to the PPP loans, I have to say I really saw the national movement come together and support us in a way that I've never experienced.
I knew the work had to go past dollars raised and allocated. I knew it had to impact real lives. Meet Kathy, a Jewish professional from a small federation who spends her time year-round supporting the elderly in the community.
I have been fortunate enough that they hired Catherine. And she comes to visit people, and she'll visit just to visit sometimes.
You have trouble going to the store, she'll take you to the store. If you have trouble getting food, she'll help provide food for you. Anything, she's there. That's a wonderful thing to have.
Because Federation does crucial work all of the time, during this unprecedented time, they were already there, able to be attentive and supportive of those who needed it most.
There were the kind of creative expressions that you saw, like having the youth in our various youth movements going out and singing and performing to elderly Holocaust survivors who were shut-ins in their apartment, and they just stood on the balconies while the students serenaded them from below.
Thank you so much for being here, and we're so happy to perform for you.
I got to meet doctors in Israel and hear just how much Federation's work meant to them.
Nobody expected such a pandemic. We were able to save more lives because your Federation for Jewish Philanthropy spearheaded the drive that allowed us to purchase this device.
But as you know, Federation's work overseas doesn't just stop in Israel. Federation's work, your work, travels around the world, to 70 countries, in fact.
Спасибо. Я благодарю тех, кто беспокоится о нас, хоть не ходим, но видите, нам уже второй подарок дают. Дай Бог здоровья.
So what should be the takeaway for me?
I think being part of Federation and being a leader has given us a unique gift to be present at a time when we're really needed.
I have never seen our community more united and stronger in its shared purpose than today.
If you want to be part of something greater than yourself, if you want to amplify your voice and magnify your generosity to create a brighter Jewish future and a better world, then join us. Be part of this local, national, and global movement that we call Federation. We need you.
There's a rich history, but there's also a bright future because of the infrastructure that is created year in, year out by leaders like you. Thank you, Federation leaders, for your leadership.
What a moment to be part of this incredible system made possible by great leaders. To bless this Kahal of leaders, please welcome Rabbi Angela Buchdahl.
Good evening. I'm stating the obvious when I say that this GA is unlike any other GA we will experience, and that this global pandemic has wreaked havoc and caused upheaval in every realm. No one has been immune. No community or congregation or federation has not felt its vulnerability and experienced tremendous losses in this moment. And when we are in times like these, needing some perspective, our tradition offers us blessing. When we come through a life-threatening or dangerous time, such as air travel or a long sea voyage or coming through childbirth or a serious illness, or yes, even a global pandemic virus, there's a blessing for that. It's called Birkat HaGomel. And we offer this blessing to indicate our gratitude for coming through a dangerous or hardship time like this, and that we are still here and alive today. Now, this word gomel comes from the Hebrew word gamal, and it's worth reflecting on for just a moment. It's kind of a strange Hebrew word that is not easily translatable. I think roughly it means an investment in something for its future growth. And the first time we see it in Torah is refers to Isaac's weaning. And his mother here invests in him and nourishes him, and then he matures and is weaned. Gamal is also used to indicate fruit that has matured and ripened. It often indicates some kind of gift or payback, even when that payback sometimes can be fearful, as in the case where it's used with Joseph's brothers, who are fearful for the payback, the gamal, that Joseph might inflict for what they have done. But whether or not this word is used even in hardship or crisis, one thing is clear: it always indicates a potential for growth. Could we see this time and offer blessing for it, to understand that we are making an investment in our future growth, even if we don't fully understand where it will lead us? Can we, like our ancestors, trust that this too in some day will be a gift? So I'd like to begin by offering not the traditional Birkat HaGomel, but words from Psalm 13 as an alternate Gomel blessing. Va'ani v'chastecha v'tachti, yagel libi bishuatecha, ashir l'Adonai ki gamal alai. I have always trusted in your chesed, in your kindness, God, and my heart rejoices in your saving grace. I will sing to you, God, ki gamal alai, because you have given us this gift for growth. Va'ani bechastecha v'tachti, yageli bi bishuatecha. Va'ani bechastecha v'tachti, yageli bi bishuatecha. Ashir l'Adonai, Ashir l'Adonai, Ashir l'Adonai ki gamal alai. Ashir Ladonai, Ashir Ladonai, Ashir Ladonai ki gamal alai.
Next up, leading a critical bipartisan conversation. Please welcome Ann Pava.
Good evening. My name is Ann Pava, and I'm from West Hartford, Connecticut. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this important discussion of national policy with two distinguished governors, Governor Hutchinson of Arkansas and Governor Whitmer of Michigan. We are experiencing a time when this country feels more divided than ever, and we are so grateful to have the opportunity to host a bipartisan discussion with two governors who hail from two diverse states, from opposite sides of the aisle, and two governors who are great friends to the Jewish community. As my friend and mentor, Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, teaches us, all human beings are created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. With this lesson in mind, we understand that we must stand up for civility and respect each other, no matter who wins the election. And now, let us dive into some questions that our community would love to hear about. Our first round of questions are on COVID. Here's the first question. COVID-19 has put tremendous strains on our economy, our health systems, and our families. As governors, you are on the front lines every day, charged with running complex government agencies, delivering services far and wide, and bringing communities together. Can you each share with us some of the major challenges you face as governors in leading your states through COVID-19, through the COVID-19 crisis, to ensure the health of your residents and stabilities of your economies? Governor Hutchinson, can we ask you to answer first?
Sure, and also want to thank the Jewish Federation for hosting this, and I'm delighted to be with my colleague, Governor Whitmer from Michigan, and it is good to continue a bipartisan dialogue on issues that are important to our country. You know, during this time, it's been amazing that the governors have had such a key role to play, and we have learned from each other. We've watched each other, we've communicated, and that's been very, very helpful to us. You know, in terms of Arkansas and the challenges that we have faced, is just like every other area. It's the economy, it is personal, it's families, it's isolation issues, and it's the length of this and the unpredictability of this virus that's made it particularly challenging. And we've had to make a number of tough decisions here in Arkansas. We actually kept our economy open. We did not have shelter-in-place orders. And, you know, looking back for us, that was a good decision because we did not lose 100,000 jobs that we could have lost otherwise. And then it was, you know, a tough decision for a southern state whenever we issued a mask mandate. I did issue a mask mandate, which the scientists said that's the right thing to do. It was not met with overwhelming gratitude for that mandate, but it was necessary and it's made a difference for Arkansas. And then the third really challenging decision was opening up schools. We opened up our schools here in Arkansas in classroom instruction as well as virtual. We're trying to keep our economy moving. People are working, and we think that's important for our future as well as staying healthy.
Thank you. Governor Whitmer?
Yes, well, thank you for having me. I'm so pleased to be with the Federation and with my colleague, Governor Hutchinson. It is, I'm so grateful to be here. And I will echo some of the comments that my colleague just made. You know, in the midst of COVID-19, there's no question that the nation's governors have done a lot of work together. We've been doing a lot of similar work in our various states, although our states are very different. And I think that's part of one of the great lessons of COVID-19 is I've come to really rely on and value the relationships that I have with other governors on both sides of the aisle. some of the toughest decisions that we've had to make to save lives have been informed not just by the best scientists within our states, but by sharing information with our colleagues, whether it's Mike DeWine, my neighbor to the south in Ohio, or J.B. Pritzker in the other direction, but also south in Illinois, Democrat and Republican DeWine. It's been something that I have found to be really critical so that we're really focused on solving problems. And I'm proud of the work that we've done in Michigan. I'm concerned, as every governor in the nation is, about COVID and a second wave. And that's why we're going to work so hard to mitigate the potential and the severity of what many think will very likely be a second wave. And that's where our work remains centered.
You both certainly have your hands full, and we are so grateful. And I'm sure the people of your states are incredibly grateful. I'm going to switch topics. As you both know, support for Israel really drives our Federation community. Governor Whitmer, you were in Israel last year to participate in a conference on water technology and environmental controls. So I have a little three-part question for you there. Why did you make Israel your first overseas trip? Was this your first time in Israel? And what did you think?
So I had been to Israel. My father took my brother and sister and me when we were in college, but that was a long time ago. And so when I had the opportunity to go and to make this my first international trip as the governor of Michigan, I jumped at the opportunity. It was my first international trip, of course, and I did not know it would be my last for a while because of COVID. But I'm so glad that we took it. The first week was focused on the water conference and signing memorandums of understanding in the mobility space, getting to see so many different parts of the Israeli economy and innovation that is happening. And also after that first week, my family joined me. And so we were actually there for about 12 days total. And it really was an incredible opportunity.
Thank you. Governor Hutchinson, you signed 2 bills into law strengthening the state of Arkansas's economic ties with Israel. One allows Arkansas to invest in Israel bonds, and the other prohibits state and local governments from contracting with or investing in companies that boycott Israel. First of all, thank you for that. The question is, with such a small Jewish population in the state, can you discuss why this was important to you?
Thank you. And we do have a small Jewish population, but we value that diversity. We value the Jewish community as being part of our larger state community, and it's a joy of mine to participate with them in a number of religious activities and holy days as well. In terms of the legislation, that was generated by those that love Israel and respect Israel as a nation, and I was happy to sign it into law. And the reason for it is that, to say you can boycott Israel, that's just wrong. It is anti-Semitic. It is wrong and fundamentally. And so we did not want to support or do business with companies that boycott Israel as a state. And then secondly, we also signed into law the opportunity to invest our state bonds with Israel. And so to buy Israel bonds through our state treasury, that is something that gives us a good return, but also shows the respect for Israel.
On behalf of Jewish Federations of North America and the Jewish communities of Arkansas and Michigan in particular, I want to personally thank you for taking the time to speak to us tonight. And of course, I want to personally thank you. We all want to thank you for what you are doing for our country. And to everyone who is participating in this year's General Assembly, I hope you enjoy the rest of our virtual gathering, and please don't forget to vote. Also, please continue to join us for important public policy engagement like the National Mission to Washington, D.C., that we hope will take place next year. Thank you.
And now, please welcome Eric Fingerhut, the President and CEO of the Jewish Federations of North America.
It was about a year ago. I had just started at JFNA. We were sitting in the conference room discussing how to make whatever it was we were working on as useful as possible to every federation. Then someone said, "Well, Eric, you know, if you've seen one federation, you've seen one federation." And then everyone laughed, except me. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand the joke. We are very different from one another. The largest Jewish federation in North America amazingly has an annual campaign of approximately $200 million per year, an endowment of almost $1 billion, about 400 employees, and serves a community of 1 million Jews. The smallest federation has 1 employee, no endowment, raises about $200,000 per year, 1,000 times smaller than the largest federation, and serves a community of a few thousand Jews. And even among federations of similar size, there are important differences. Some communities struggle with access to basic human needs, while others have more freedom to focus on Jewish life. Some federations have long-standing relationships with Jewish communal agencies through which they deliver services to the community and for which they take financial responsibility. Some of these are even integrated into a single corporate structure. Others run more programs themselves or partner differently with the Jewish organizations in their communities. And yet we are a system, as we have been for a century. If you think about it, how different is this than the Jewish people as a whole? After all, we don't look alike, we don't dress alike, we don't eat alike, we don't pray alike, and yet we are Am Echad, one people, B'nai Yisrael, the children of Israel. The Talmud uses the metaphor of a coin. In those days, coins were individually stamped, but of course they came out looking identical to each other. In contrast, even though all human beings descend from Adam and Eve, God made it so that each one of us would be different, unique. And yet all the people stood together at Sinai and said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen. But I couldn't get the joke out of my mind until I had a brainstorm. In today's world, where do we put our most complete descriptions of ourselves, of our missions, of our work? Why, on our websites, of course. So I began a personal project to visit the websites of all 146 federations. What I found was one of the most moving, meaningful, and yes, religious experiences of my life. I found profoundly different communities who share common goals, common visions, and common values. I found common dreams and common challenges, and I found a common sense of collective responsibility for the future of their own communities and of the Jewish people as a whole. Rabbi Sachs reminds us that a leader is one who takes responsibility. I found the leadership of the Jewish people on those 146 websites. Now, you choose different words, but you all say the same thing. You say you are committed to building flourishing Jewish communities at home and around the world. You say that a flourishing Jewish community is one that is healthy, one that is safe, one that is caring, one that is welcoming and inclusive, one that is educated and engaged in Jewish life, one that is active in the broader community, and one that is deeply connected to Israel and the Jewish people around the world. My friends, we have much more in common than we have differences. And when 146 separate organizations spread across a great continent have so much in common, there is an indisputable truth, and that is that as much as each federation accomplishes individually for its community, there is no limit to what we can accomplish for the Jewish people as a whole and the world when we work together. Now, our history proves this to be true. It wasn't one federation alone, but all of us together that welcomed the immigrants fleeing persecution and seeking opportunity. It wasn't one federation alone, but all of us together that raised the funds and partnered with the Joint to save the remnants of the Jewish people after World War II. It wasn't one federation alone, but all of us together who raised the funds and partnered with the Jewish Agency to help build and sustain the State of Israel and to redeem our brothers and sisters from captivity and danger in the former Soviet Union and elsewhere in the world. And it isn't one federation alone, but all of us, together with all our organizational partners, who are connecting the most diverse generation in the history of the Jewish people to Jewish life, to Israel, to each other. And it isn't one federation alone, but all of us, together with all our partners, who are keeping our Jewish institutions and communal life alive during this global pandemic. So let's replace the joke with a song. Yachad, Lev El Lev, together, heart to heart, Hakol Efshar, everything is possible. Thank you for the privilege of joining with you in this work, and for all you continue to teach me about responsibility and leadership. Now, to continue our conversation about building flourishing communities, it is my pleasure to welcome two renowned experts on the subject. Priya Parker, the acclaimed author of The Art of Gathering, How We Meet and Why It Matters, and Harvard professor Robert Putnam, who is celebrating the 20th anniversary of his seminal work, Bowling Alone, and his new book, The Upswing.
Okay, Professor Putnam, it is such a treat to be in conversation with you. You are, I think, could be called the godfather of we. You've deeply shaped my generation of community builders. It's hard to believe that this year marks the 20th anniversary of the acclaimed and epic and field-changing book, Bowling Alone. I grew up as a student of public policy and organizational design, Bowling Alone being very much a Bible of my generation. And you have now come out with a new book called Upswing, which we'll get to in a moment. But I first would love to just hear from you, marking these 20 years, how do you see connection and social community and coming together and coming apart now? And over the last 20 years, you know, what has come of what you so acutely coined in the year 2000 of us all bowling alone?
That's a very interesting question, Priya, and it's an especially interesting question. You wouldn't want to have known this. Simultaneously with this new book, which is called The Upswing, Simon & Schuster is publishing also a 20th anniversary of Bowling Alone, and in that 20th anniversary edition, I have occasion to reflect on the very questions you're asking. That is, I in the preface and in the afterword to this 20th anniversary edition, I reflect myself on what we've learned and you know, was I right or was I wrong, and a little bit about the experience I had. It was a remarkable ride, actually, speaking personally, because it wasn't that I was particularly smarter than anybody else, but I had just stumbled upon in some data what lots and lots of Americans knew in their own lives, that they were not as involved in community life as their parents had been. You know, their mom had been in Adasa and they weren't, and they felt a little guilty about that. And then along comes this Harvard professor who says, it's not just you, it's the whole darn country. And that, I think, is mainly why the book caught on. And in retrospect, we went back over a lot of the evidence. And in retrospect, I think I was mostly on target in my projections. They've mostly continued, not everyone, but mostly. But of course, the big question that everybody wants to ask is, how about the internet? And that is an interesting question because Bowling Alone was written 6 or 7 years before social media. So in the afterword to the book, we spent a lot of time trying to understand, the way we put it is TikTok as good as bowling leagues for connecting? That is, has TikTok simply replaced bowling leagues? We can, do without bowling leagues now and get along with TikTok. And then, of course, in the middle of all this, the whole world began a random experiment on exactly that question. In the middle of when I was trying to reflect on it, the virus arrived, and therefore we were all trying to figure out, is TikTok as good as bowling leagues? In some respects, the evidence suggests that face-to-face is really important, actually. And in other respects, of course, it's not the same thing as I use TikTok because I don't know about you, but Priya, but I am about 80 years too old to even know what TikTok is, but I have grandchildren.
I think you could do a really
viral.
I think you could do a really viral TikTok launch video for the Upswing. Then you could sell all the books, you and your grandchildren.
We're working on it. But so I'm trying to get quickly to your question. It was a question you had no idea that I was going to be able to answer, which is how, what does it look like looking back? I would say, and so I'm now actually trying to answer the question, in a way, is TikTok as good as, or better than, or not so good as bowling leagues? That it's wrong to think about virtual and real worlds as if they were two separate worlds. It's wrong to think that we can either have virtual or face-to-face, because most of our networks nowadays are combined. If you think about your own personal networks, most of them combine face-to-face ties. You see people all the time, but they also include, email or God knows what other sort of social media. And what that is telling us is that virtual ties, TikTok, and real ties, that is face-to-face, and almost everybody even people who are on TikTok also are connecting with those same people face-to-face. So we're living not in a world either or, we're living in a both and world. That's the first thing I'd say. And the second thing is, if you look back at the history of the last 25 years, it's clear that what the internet will do, we're in charge. I mean by that, technology is not some strange force out there that's forcing itself on us. So that it's not, I don't believe at all in technological determination. I don't mean that, it does, it's not.
It's a tool.
There's some God up there that says, okay, we're going to have TikTok or we're going to have Facebook or whatever. Those events are responding to our choices, but also by what we choose to watch and choose not to watch, we have control. So I think this has been an extremely interesting period, and I basically think that we've sort of been correct in the basic argument of bowling alone, but there's been a lot that's new. That's the bottom line answer to the good question you began with, Priya.
I wrote The Art of Gathering in 2018, and it was a book that is a facilitator's guide to in-person gatherings, right? So weddings, funerals, birthday parties, town halls, protests. And as a conflict resolution facilitator, which is my training and background, the core of my work was to basically look at how can you take any type of gathering, whether it's public, at work, or in your most intimate lives, and make it meaningful for the people that you're gathering, particularly when it's across difference.
Right.
And the most common question I was asked pre-COVID at any speaking engagement was, do these rules apply online? And why don't you talk about online gatherings? And my answer at that moment was they absolutely apply online, which is you have to know what your purpose is. You have to think about what your rules are and what the constraints are of the system that you're working with. And it's an experiment in togetherness. And I think one of the things that I found this spring, to kind of use your language, is we can absolutely gather online using Zoom, using other technologies when we're thoughtful about it. It's very good for bonding, but not very good for bridging.
Yes, exactly.
And I think one of the elements of the pandemic is it's actually deeply threatening what you would call bridging associations, where people gather with their fellow citizens, where we run into people at the park or in the library or in these public spaces. And I think that's one of the biggest dangers that is very difficult to replicate online, in part because of the way that the rules of Twitter and the self-selection of Instagram and even the viral videos in TikTok spread.
If you forgive me, that's actually relevant also, or there's another way of looking at that in terms of this other book that I'm with Shailene Romney Garrett, I'm publishing this week, in fact, which is called The Upswing. And the new book, The Upswing, from one point of view, just does two things. It widens the time span over which we're looking. So it's the Upswing looks at the period, last 125 years, from the turn of the 20th century, roughly 1900, to now. And it widens, and it looks at not just social capital, but it also looks at income inequality, at political polarization, and at cultural, I would say, narcissism or self focus on the I rather than the we. And the core finding, it's so easy to describe, it seems almost too simple, is that over the course of the 20th century, there was one big curve that starts off with quite low social capital, high polarization, high inequality, great self-focus, a period much like our own actually. And then that rises steadily until the 1960s, the middle of the 1960s, with every year Americans becoming more equal, more cooperative, more connected, more focused on what they had in common and less focused on their own self-interest. And then, amazingly, simultaneously, all of these measures, the measures of income inequality, of political polarization, of joiningness, connection, like both connections of the like Rotary clubs, but also connections like family, within the family, all sorts of connections, and also a focus on, the degree to which we're focused on ourselves or on the community, all of those variables turn sharply down. And for the last 50 years, basically, since the middle 60s, we've been going steadily downhill. And we, in the book, call that the I curve. We start off with a very I-focused America in 1900. We rise steadily to a very we-focused America in the middle 60s. And then we fall sharply, and we're back now, actually, at just about the same point that we started.
You have this, just to let the audience kind of get even a better sense of this, you have this beautiful introduction where for 20 pages, the reader thinks you're describing today, right? We've never been more politically polarized. We've entered a gilded age. The stock market and actually wage have never been separate. And I was sitting there kind of wringing my hands and reading along. And then at the end you say, and this was the year 1898. And it was this lovely surprise and reframe. Part of what I found so both interesting and promising for where we are right now as a country is what does it actually mean to be a we? And what does it actually mean to be a we in a deeply diverse as well as unequal society? And I thank you for your work and for the conversation today. And it's a pleasure to be with you.
Can I just add one more? I know that I'm, first of all, I'm overcome by this way, and that's surely the right way to end our conversation. But I do want to say one thing that maybe ties us a little bit more to the larger focus of the American Jewish community that is of which this is part, and that is that the issue of what counts as we and how the internal we of the Jewish community and the external we of the larger group within which the Jewish community is embedded, that is an enduring issue that's highly relevant to Jews, and the Jewish experience is highly relevant to the rest of the world at this very moment as we're trying to figure out how we can manage multiple we's.
But one of the things when I wrote The Art of Gathering, I interviewed over 100 different types of people, creating all types of experiences for groups. And at some point I had to stop including all of my Jewish characters, because Jewish communities know how to gather. It's embedded in the ethos of the, of the text, of the culture, of the, and I think I've learned so much from many types of Jewish leaders all across the spectrum, because it is a core moral responsibility to take and contest it and take it seriously and ask who is we now and who and how do we fight for the largest we possible.
I couldn't agree more. And I think people's histories are complicated. I'm Jewish, but I converted to Judaism almost 60 years ago, and I'm and I've actually raised, my family is, all my kids are Jewish, all my grandchildren have been bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. So I have a kind of a slightly unusual perspective on Judaism. I really do think, stepping now outside a little bit my own Jewish identity, I really do think many, I would say ordinary Jews by birth, don't quite realize how valuable the lessons that the Jewish community could convey to the rest of the country, well, the rest of the world, about bridging and bonding and how you make them work together. Well, it's been a great pleasure, actually.
Thank you for the conversation and your work.
And now, please welcome Dina Rashis, board member, Combined Jewish Philanthropies of Boston and the American Joint Distribution Committee.
Good evening, everyone. I want to start by thanking Priya Parker and Professor Putnam for sharing your thoughts and wisdom with us. I'm honored to be here, joined by three incredible thought leaders as we continue to think about how to build flourishing Jewish communities. I'd like to invite Isaac Bougie Herzog, the chairman of the executive of the Jewish Agency for Israel, to share some thoughts with us before we invite our other panelists to join. Bougie, thank you so much for joining us this evening from Israel.
Thank you, Dina. It's a huge pleasure to be here and, of course, to follow such an incredibly interesting discussion between two illustrious thinkers, Professor Putnam and Mrs. Parker. It was really fascinating because it touched upon the core issue that brings us all together in this very distinguished gathering of the Jewish Federations of North America, the Federation Together and Jewish Together. Because what were they talking about? They said that the gathering is something essential for the Jewish people, for Jewish culture. Stems out of religion, out of minyan. And the question will be, how post-COVID will the minyan function? How will communities function? And we, being the Jewish Agency for Israel, a major strategic partner and ally of the Jewish Federations of North America, we feel that this change must be met by new, fresh ideas, which will span throughout the Jewish world. We've seen it together with JFNA, when we assisted now Jewish communities all over the world in their plights. We see together now when we are dealing with a new resolution to bring thousands of new Ethiopian Olim immigrants to Israel. And we see it now when we work together with JFNA on our emissaries in the communities, the Shinshinim, or when we deal with the impact of what it is to be Jewish and Ami Unity programs within Israel, influencing the knowledge of Israelis about the Jewish world. So I want to wish each and every one of you great success in these deliberations, good health. We're very proud of this partnership, and we should deal now together out of this conference with the next steps as we emerge, hopefully, from this crisis in the next few months.
Thank you, Bougie. I am so pleased to invite our other two panelists to join now. Erica Rudin-Luria, the president of the Jewish Federation of Cleveland, and Eliza Klein, co-founder and CEO of One Table. So our next question will be for Eliza and Erica. We just heard from Priya, Professor Putnam, and Bougie about the power and importance of connection and community. As influential Jewish leaders and innovators, could you talk about how you are working to inspire connection through your current roles? Erica, would you mind going first?
Sure, thank you very much. It's great to be with all of you and all of you in the communities out there. Connecting people and building community is at the core of everything we do at the Jewish Federation of Cleveland, not just at the Federation, but in the Cleveland Jewish community. And if there was any doubt of its importance, the pandemic has erased all of that doubt. Because while our buildings have been largely closed, our Jewish community has worked to remain open and engaged. Much of our strength and resilience as individuals come from being part of something greater. It's what keeps us from feeling isolated and alone, and it's what reassures us. So we've had to re-envision how it is community can be present in people's lives.
And Elisa, how about you?
Thanks for inviting me here. The topic of connection has driven basically my entire career and all that we've been spending our time working at One Table as well from our inception, but things are so different now. Prior to COVID, a typical Shabbat dinner hosted through the One Table platform with 10 to 15 people crammed into an apartment with a big festive meal. It was, for some people, kind of a periodic opportunity to get together and incorporate Jewish practice into their lives. And we've seen a dramatic shift in all of that. So there are new opportunities that can happen. And I think that is exactly the message, that as the Jewish community, we can say, hey, we see you. And we know that this is hard. And how might this make a difference for you in a way that works for you on your terms? And the result has been that prior to COVID, there were about 200 to 250 dinners every week through One Table. We are now averaging 400 to 600 dinners every week. So we see that people are really hungry for connection. And it's a matter of providing the means and the reminder that they can actually do it for themselves through Jewish practice and ritual.
That's wonderful. Erica, in leading one of the larger federations in North America, would you reflect on some of the challenges and opportunities you have faced as a leader during the pandemic? And if you're able to share, how are you preparing for what comes next in your community?
Sure, thank you. It's been fascinating because I think regardless of whether we're talking about One Table or the Jewish Agency, Israel or the United States, I think we're facing so many of the same similar challenges. So one of the largest challenges that I see are mental health and resiliency. And how do we keep up the resilience of the community? You know, in terms of the future, we have many conversations within the community, within the Federation, about what is it that we want to envision for our future. And we talk about it in terms of what do we want our children to tell our grandchildren about how we acted today. And that's kind of our North Star. So we looked at it and we said, we want them to say that we reached out and supported the isolated and vulnerable. We left no one behind. We made sure that no one needed to take time off from Jewish life because of the pandemic. And we have a list of kind of those visions, which are our goalposts, to make sure that regardless of what happens during the next few months, the pandemic we can't control. We believe we can control our actions and how our community experiences much of it.
Bougie, how has technology, especially during the pandemic, helped to build social connections between diaspora communities and Israel? And is there anything in particular during this difficult time that has inspired you?
So first of all, clearly the silver lining, one of the silver linings of this era is the upgrading of the digital platforms serving communities in the entire Jewish world. We, for one, we work in 66 countries around the globe, serving Jewish communities wherever they are, from small to big. And clearly, the digital platforms that we've established, I was inspired tremendously by great volunteering. I'm inspired and awed by the federation system and the Jewish Federations of North America. This umbrella organization has touched the ability of communities and Jews all over the world to be able to sustain themselves, as well as helping Israelis in difficult consequences. So together, only together, can we establish these unique platforms for the future.
Wonderful. Elisa, you mentioned that over the last several years, One Table has been connecting young adults to the Jewish ritual of Shabbat. One Table participants are digital natives. So rather than focus on their ability to adapt to a virtual world, I'd love to hear your perspective on the young adult experience during the pandemic and insights into how they are looking to connect to Jewish community during this socially distanced time, and perhaps what you think they might be looking for in the future.
The pandemic will really be defining for young adults. This is the time when you are asking existential questions about who do you want to be in the world, what impact do you want to have, and the world is full of uncertainty right now. So the impact specifically for people in their 20s and 30s is really disproportionate. On the one hand, they may be at generally lower risk for some of the physical repercussions of the pandemic, of coronavirus, but the mental health impacts can have very long-term implications. And I'll say that the research and our lived experience has exposed multiple truths really at the same time. So on the one hand, similar to what Erica said, that there is an alarming 2/3 of our participants are reporting heightened depression, anxiety, and hopelessness. And at the same time, on the other hand, an even higher percentage, 3/4, have expressed increased gratitude for what they have in life, and they express that often for a desire to protect others. One of my favorite examples is a host in Nevada was hosting a socially distanced outdoor dinner, and she requested a tape measure so that she could set up her picnic in a way that was really going to protect everybody. That's not normally what we think of when you set the Shabbat dinner table, but it is enabling people to feel safe and connected. And I love the example of caring for others.
Let's imagine it's 2 years from now. Bezrat Hashem, we are gathered together for a General Assembly in a post-pandemic world. What do you hope we will have done together as a community to advance our efforts to build flourishing Jewish life?
I really hope that the trust that has now been established between so many of our organizations, between federations, between JFNA, between Jewish Agency and organizations like One Table, and that we all see that we're in this together, may that trust bloom and deepen so that when we look back, we're in a much better place than we were even when it started as a community.
What I hope in 2 years' time is that B'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim will be at least in 2 years' time, meaning seeing all of you in Jerusalem, hopefully in 2 years' time, that we all can at least meet and gather together, pray together, and discuss the future and the well-being of the Jewish people and the state of Israel. Naturally, things won't be the same, meaning there will be many changes in humanity and many changes in communal life and many changes in the Jewish world.
Thank you. Those were both just beautiful, what Bougie and Eliza both said. As Eliza was talking about a tape measure, I was thinking, what if we consider a retractable tape measure? Because could this pandemic be a time where people really understand the value of person-to-person connections and relationships, where people understand that one person's action can have a positive or negative impact on others around them? And I think that if we are able to demonstrate that the Jewish community is a source of strength and meaning and impact and resilience, then we will be a stronger and flourishing community.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Bougie, Eliza, Erica, for sharing your insights and wisdom with us this evening. How blessed are we as a community to have such exceptional leaders like all of you. You've given us so much to think about in the weeks and months to come. As we imagine being together again, you are tremendous partners, and we greatly appreciate your leadership and everything you do for the Jewish community.
Before we close the evening with one last song, I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. I hope you found it as inspirational and meaningful as I did. Despite the unknowns that lay ahead of us, I'm confident that we will forge ahead in safeguarding and building the flourishing Jewish communities of today and tomorrow, and I look forward to being on this journey with all of you. I hope that you will all join us again tomorrow for the Jewish Together Plenary at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Time. It will be our chance to celebrate our Jewish community at large, and that celebration wouldn't be possible without Federation leadership there. And now, please join us for one last song of hope and prayer for all of our communities, our families, and for the world.
We pray for healing of the body. We pray for healing of the soul, for strength of flesh and mind and spirit. We pray to once again be whole. Elna Rifana. Oh, please heal us now. Refuat ha-nefesh, refuat ha-guf, refuat shelema. Elna Rifana. Oh, please heal us now. Please heal us. Refuat ha-nefesh, refuat ha-guf, refuat shelema. Heal us now. Heal us now. Heal us now. Heal us now. הושיע את עמך וברך את נחלתך ורעים ונשם על האומה. מי שברך אבותינו, מי שברך אמותינו, אנא אדוני הושיענה. We pray for healing of our people. We pray for healing of the land and peace for every race and nation, every child, every woman, every land. Elna Rifana. Oh, please heal us now. Please heal us. Refuat ha-nefesh, refuat ha-guf, refuat shelema. Elna Rifana. Oh, please heal us now. Please heal us. Refuat ha-nefesh, refuat ha-guf, refuat shelema. Heal us now. Heal us now. Heal us now. Rifana. Heal us now.
Thank you for joining us for Federation Together. We hope you enjoy the rest of the 2020 Virtual GA.